You're listening to the Energy is Love podcast.
Yeah, it was really, really delicious. Okay, we're good.
I think I'm creating raspberry pancakes. We're going to have to make that. I know that's the only thing I'm going to be able to talk about the whole time
Comes
now.
highly recommended.
Raspberry pancakes.
Some whipped cream.
Okay.
Did it have whipped cream?
No, it
syrup?
didn't. I didn't do syrup. I did apricot jam.
Okay.
Devin, I've got a bunch of questions right off the bat.
Okay.
So first and foremost,
Are we recording now?
We're recording.
Great.
So tell everybody about not about your podcast, because we'll probably talk about your podcast, but I decided that when we have guests come on, rather than waiting until the very end of the episode to highlight where they can be found and their social and all their other stuff, we're gonna do it right at the beginning.
Okay, great.
So where can people find you? Where can they tell us about your podcast real quick? And then we'll talk about everything else.
Okay, my name is Devin Davis. I too have a podcast. It is called Writing in the Tiny House, and it is geared toward tackling the idea of the tormented artist. So it's about empowering creative minds so that they can better create, so that they can, put out good content. And it is geared mostly toward writing, but a lot of the things that we talk about are pretty universal. And so you can find me on Instagram at author Devin Davis. And that's mostly where I post my stuff.
It's your main platform.
Yeah, Instagram's kind of the place to find me, I guess.
Yeah. Are you on TikTok?
I am not on TikTok. I tried to think of different things to do for TikTok and couldn't figure it out.
We're on TikTok.
That's great.
Yeah. It's so fun.
I hope so.
It consists of resharing or having the rough draft of the reels that Craig creates.
Yeah.
And I try to do a little spin with them on TikTok, and then creating all kinds of videos, drafts that I then delete and never post, because I'm like, no, that's not going out there.
Right. And then that gets put on TikTok.
Right. No, I don't. That's what they say to do. They're like, post your drafts. And I'm like, I delete my drafts.
Right.
I'll delete them. So that's ours.
I forgot to do my due diligence, and I don't remember the episode that you were on, the number.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember when it was.
Yeah, it was a while ago.
It's been a
2
while.
years ago.
Was it full 2 years
It was
ago?
It had
because
to
it
have
was
been.
June, wasn't it?
It was
June of
June.
2020.
No, it was 2019.
Was it
I think it was
2019?
2020.
It couldn't have been 2020. That was when I moved, and that was COVID time.
Yeah, I think it was 2020.
It was a long time ago.
I think.
Anyways,
my memories.
I'll find it.
Yeah.
Don't both of us
I'll
look
find
for
it.
it?
Okay.
babe?
Well, you have the
Or maybe it
conversation.
was
I'll
earlier.
find it.
Maybe it was before.
Yeah, I should have done it beforehand, because I just wanted to mention it so people can go back and listen to it.
I don't remember the
know.
topic. What did we even talk
I'm
about?
talking about the barbecue, but
The
you're talking
barbecue
about
happened.
the podcast.
Yes.
I don't know when the podcast happened.
Yeah.
Don't wait for
Okay,
me.
sorry.
The podcast was before
The
then.
podcast was.
I don't remember
How
what
are
we
the
talked
boys?
about
We
either.
have to talk about that later. Okay. I'm like, I
Anyways,
want to catch up.
Devin's back.
Devin's back. We have a lot to catch up on.
Right.
I'm so grateful. Tell us how your life has changed since the last episode.
Since the last episode, so let's see. I don't think that I was in the tiny house yet
I don't think you were either.
when we had our last episode.
I have no context now. Apparently, it is
I know,
out
right?
of my head.
Like time is not real.
Exactly.
I forgot. I also, before you talk about tiny house, sorry, because I had two questions.
Yeah.
I want to know all about this ice cream that you're making.
Oh, my
Because
ice
making
cream.
everybody
So
hungry.
good.
Yeah.
When can we expect the ice cream out of the tiny house shop?
Right. So I do a different ice cream every weekend, just because life is awesome that way. So as Craig mentioned, I live in a tiny house, and so I have 256 square feet to dedicate my whole life to. And so to have something like an ice bucket ice cream maker, I had to make space for that. Mm-hmm. And so it was a serious purchase, and I love gourmet homemade ice cream. And so why not blab about it on Instagram every weekend? So, I mean, here we are in, toward the middle of June, and I've made a different ice cream every weekend.
Wow.
Since the beginning of May.
Are you just whipping them up, or are you following recipes? Because it looks like all sorts of different kinds of, like you said, gourmet, right? You're not just sticking with chocolate and vanilla.
Right. So a lot of it I kind of whip up. The hot chocolate ice cream that I made last week was me finding hot chocolate mix in my pantry and not having the other ingredients for the other ice cream that I was going to make. And so sometimes it's kind of off the cuff, but I do have like a recipe book that I will reference and do some things from that too. So it's both.
Very cool.
Yeah.
I'm a little upset that we don't have any right now. And that,
So am I. It would be a little distracting from the episode.
right. So I found it, episode 205.
And what's the title of it?
Social Conditioning of Emotions. And it was August of 2020.
Yeah. Did we talk about my divorce at that time?
I don't think we talked about the
It
divorce.
was August of 2020.
Yeah.
So
it was later.
Yeah, I think we talked about, well, I don't
wouldn't have
think,
guessed
right?
that.
I'm reading we talked about whiteness in America.
There we go.
Yeah.
It was during the protest with Black Lives Matter.
Yes, and George Floyd and everything that took place. And so, yeah, quite a bit has changed since then.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Your divorce.
I'm divorced. So, yeah, the divorce happened in December of 2020. It had been kind of not a long time. It had been, I guess, like 18 months in the making and was finally
How long have you guys been married?
finalized.
How long were you married?
We had been married for 10 years. We made it to the 10-year mark. We did not celebrate year 10. We weren't really friends at that time.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we were together for, the marriage license lasted for 10 years. Yeah. And then just before Christmas, it was finalized that year. So 2020 was kind of a bitch for a lot of different reasons.
Just a fucking terrible year, wasn't it?
It was.
It really fucked
Yeah.
us up.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know if, like, I wonder what 2020 would have looked like without COVID, because I think it would have been just as hard of a year for us had it not. I mean, yes, COVID was a big deal and it, affected so many different things and it played a role in obviously so many different aspects of it, but it was still just a shitty year.
Yeah.
Yeah. In a lot of different ways. And I totally get that.
Yeah.
It was just after lockdown that I moved into the tiny house. And so, into this city that I didn't know and whatever else, and trying to get to know and get used to a new place and kind of a new way of life and living alone. Like all of that was hard for me to do. I mean, I did it, but it was a struggle and it was hard.
Yeah.
So
after going through a divorce, Stephanie and I have both gone through a divorce, obviously not with each other. What do you think is like, because it's not the best piece of advice or the go-to piece of advice, but what's one thing that you didn't realize before and now you realize after that you wish you would have known during?
that everything is going to be okay. I don't know. That's probably the stupidest thing to say, but the divorce was hard. I mean, it is fine to be divorced now that came and went, but the actual process sucked. It was rough.
Yeah.
And to simply know that there was a light and I was headed toward that light in some way it would have been nice to have that foresight, which wouldn't have been possible. But yeah, like life moves on, and it is 100% possible to find to rediscover a fulfilling life, even if it's not the life you might have chosen beforehand.
I think it's a really good piece of advice. Like I can think about back when I went through my divorce and not my divorce. I constantly am thinking about the verbiage that we use, right? Back when I went through a divorce, like through that time period of my life. And you are very much just like in this super tunnel visioned space of doom and gloom and fear and chaos. And it's so hard to see outside of that. It's so hard to think that there is a light at the end of the tunnel or that things are actually going to be okay, because everything is just going to be a nightmare. Especially, I think it's much harder, obviously, right, when there's kids involved.
Sure.
So you've got 3 boys and like that whole process of trying to battle everything on top of how it's affecting your kids and how it's going to affect your kids.
Well, especially affecting my kids. That was the number one concern for a very, very long time. And to no longer be like a big voice in the household, because now there's 2 households and one of them isn't mine. and to arrive at a space to like let it be okay that my ex is now doing her life as she best sees fit, and that my boys are in that life too. And I don't know, and to arrive at a place where that's okay.
Yeah.
It took a minute. It took a minute, and it still does from time to time, but it's getting easier.
Baby, what do you think would be your piece of advice? Like, can you imagine?
I like Devin's, just like, there's light at the end of the tunnel. You will get through it. It does get, because it doesn't, it feels, it's hell. It's hell. Especially when the other party doesn't want the divorce. And so not even having, we're both working towards this goal. It's that contention and that difficulty the whole way through. Like, just like going back to that moment, you're like, is this ever going to end? Is anything ever going to be okay? Is it ever going to be safe? So just like, hang on, keep breathing. You will get through it.
Right. Keep with it.
You will get through it.
I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I think we feel that too so many times, right? It's not obviously just with divorce. Like, I'm sitting here thinking how many times I felt like that, like last night.
Yeah,
right.
With whatever you were doing.
Yeah. Yesterday, I'm just like, oh my God, this is so terrible. It is so hard to remember that, like, the sun will come up. This too shall pass. It'll be all right. We'll get through this. It's a difficult thing to remember.
Don't expect to do it right. There's no right way to do it. You just got to get through it.
Right.
Hold yourself to a standard of getting through it the correct way.
Get through it and make sure that you are taking care of yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's the t-shirt for life, right? There is no right way.
There's no right way. I like to get through it. Make sure you're taking care of yourself.
Okay. So context for the people listening, because they aren't privy. We always do this on the podcast too, where Stephanie and I obviously have like all the conversations all the time, and then we bring them over into the podcast, and it's like,
no, I get it.
Oh wait,
I get it.
You get it.
They have not been listening to our conversations.
Right. A little note to the listener.
Exactly. So back in the day, Devin and I think, how did we meet?
So forever ago, we met at like
I remember this.
an alternative medicine thing where I was a dick and snubbed you.
I forgot. Yeah, we talked about that on the last episode.
Right?
Where we met in another lifetime when we were both doing different things and in different places. And then how the hell did we reconnect?
Men's group.
I know, but how did that happen?
I had a client whose life was not in a pile yet, who knew that I was divorcing and referred me to your men's group.
Was it Zoe?
It was Zoe. I didn't know if it was okay to say that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, Zoe.
Hi,
I don't
Zoe.
know if you listen.
Okay. I couldn't remember.
That's cool.
Yeah. I couldn't remember how the hell you and I came to know each other. I mean, I knew obviously group was a big part of it, but how did that happen? Anyways, Devin and I sat in a men's group together. And when he came on the podcast back in the day, I was very interested in talking about your process of coming out and the sexuality and everything like that at the time. And you weren't comfortable at the time talking about that on the podcast.
I wasn't at the time. So in August, I was still married.
Right.
In August of 2020, I was still married, and there was a lot to still come to grips to. And so, yeah, to talk about being gay and all of the baggage that comes with that and my upbringing and whatever else, I wasn't in a space for that in August of 2020.
Right. So now we fast forward to June of 2022, and you feel more comfortable and more open and looking for safe spaces to talk about all of that stuff. Because I think that there's a lot. I mean, the sad truth is I got not a notification. We do these things on our phone, right? Where Google will send you a survey and you answer the 3 or 4 questions, and then they give you 37 cents. And,
That doesn't happen to me.
right. And so you save it.
We'll share the app with you.
And that sounds super great.
Yeah. And then eventually you've got like $4.16 and you can rent a movie that night, right?
Which sounds great.
Yeah. Super fun. And the survey that came today was all about social media. What platforms do you like? Do you think they're beneficial? And it was YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter. So all the main social media platforms. And like the final question they asked, sorry if you get any whiff of that burp, and you're like that was really rude of me right into the microphone, wasn't it? You can tell how my brain is not present.
We're doing great, Craig.
We are. Professional podcaster right here. The last question was, do I think that those platforms are good places that are like safe for people to for alternative voices and all this other kind of stuff? And it's like, absolutely not. Like, I think that they do a really wonderful job of pretending like they are, but I think that they secretly aren't. Anyways, that's not the point of the conversation. What am I trying to get at?
I don't know, but my experience.
That's great.
Did you?
No. So I came out in January of this year. There was just a big moment, like a really big moment, where it was like, you know what, regardless of the religion, regardless of the hesitation and the reservations that I had with my family, like it was time to just be myself, regardless of the other type of bullshit. And most of the places where I just kind of speak up are on social media, because that's what's available to me. And so it's always on Facebook and on Instagram and whatever. I don't know. I don't have like a huge presence on those platforms anyway, but yeah.
When you say there was a big moment, like what happened? What culminated into January of this year?
Well, so that's this will probably be most of your podcasts today. So, where do we begin with this? So, a lot of things culminated into me coming out in January of this year. So I was raised in a very conservative religious house in a small town in Utah with conservative parents, and I was gay and LDS. And as we know, being gay and being LDS do not mesh very gracefully. And being from a small town with, you know, people from a small town, when I came out to my family when I was 17, it was treated as if it were a problem that needed to be fixed. And according to a lot of the teachings of the church, I was raised LDS. I think I said that.
Yes.
They felt that it was something that could be fixed. It was something that could be healed away. And it was not something that was just a part of a person. It was a behavior thing, and it could be modified. So I was put into therapy immediately, and then managed to served a mission, great experience. But when I got home, I was still gay. Can you imagine? So I secretly put myself back into therapy. And what I didn't realize at the time was the therapy I was going through was 100% conversion therapy.
When I want to pause real quick. Was that conversion therapy with the one that you put yourself back in, or when you came out at 17 and then immediately got into therapy?
So it was with a different therapist. And when I was 17, so this is something that I didn't understand about what conversion therapy actually is. Conversion therapy is any type of therapy where the goal is to change a person's sexual orientation.
Right.
So I thought for the very longest time, and I may get to this moment in this story, but I thought that conversion therapy was like it involved like physical harm and stuff. Like you hear about the super extreme approaches to rehabilitating a homosexual with like electricity and pain and whatever. I thought that was conversion therapy, but it is a much broader thing. And so when I was 17, I mean, it was conversion therapy, but it was pretty low key. I mean, I was dealing with a bunch of self-esteem problems and worry about my family, worry about myself. And I was only in that therapy for probably less than a year. And like I said, it was pretty low key. The therapist that I was with kind of didn't know what to do. he shared a lot of stories that didn't really matter or apply to what I was going through. Like, they didn't help.
Yeah.
But when I got home off my mission and I was like, oh shit, I'm still gay. I went to LDS Family Services and found another therapist, and it was talk therapy. It was just, sitting across from him, sharing ideas, and he would introduce some things that made sense to me, and they were things that I really wanted to believe. And one of those things was that I was sick, that being gay was something that you could heal from, and there were several directions to point a finger as far as who or what to blame a person's same-sex attraction on. And because I didn't want it, because I didn't want this part of me, and I was already so afraid of myself, like, I ate it up. So I did that. And when I was 26, I met who is now my ex. And I told her before we were ever engaged, I was like, I'm attracted to men. And she's like, yeah, that'll be okay. I mean, like, the weirdness of that, like the fact that I was in that situation is already pretty weird, but also the fact that she was in that situation, like, oh, it's okay. It's okay to like marry a gay person.
It's kind of fascinating.
It is fascinating. It's also kind of fucked up.
Yeah. We, Steph and I have been doing like just daily work on ourselves and trauma and healing and inner child stuff. And like a lot of what we have been uncovering and dealing with and thinking about is like the programming that we get, right? This, not just the societal, but like from our parents and everything. And so I think about your ex-wife and like what's going on. I always zoom out, right? I have no judgment against her. This isn't anything other than just curiosity and interesting for me to look at it and zoom out and be like, what does make that person be like, okay, that's fine. Yeah, we can still get married. That's okay. I'm okay with that. And I'm like, what programming is in that, right? What is involved in regards to that? That's just fascinating to me. And it is fucked up. It's sad.
Yeah, like it's not healthy at all.
Yeah, it's really, really sad.
And I mean, that little situation comes with my ex's own,
Her story. Exactly.
Right. That's really not a question that I could 100% answer. But I was open and honest with her from the beginning, like before we were ever even engaged. And we had our engagement, we got married, and we were married for 10 years. We have 3 boys.
Did you guys get married in the temple and the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, we were married in the temple. We were married in the Ochre Mountain Temple. All of the family friends came. Like it was truly a beautiful day. Like largely one of the happiest days that I can remember. It was gorgeous. And while we were together and trying to do the typical picture of what the Mormon life is, the typical, like Stephanie was the stay-at-home mom, I was the breadwinner, we had our kids, we had our little kids at home. We found as time marched on and as we were just wrestling with what mattered to us and what mattered to our lives and whatever else, what we truly believed deep inside and whatever, that staying involved in the church wasn't making us happy, and it wasn't really making sense with what we held to be valuable. We're like, this isn't where we find that. Like, we don't go to church to be edified anymore. We find edification elsewhere. And so when I was 30, so it was about 8 years ago, we just, and my ex is my same age, we stepped out. And we did it for doctrinal reasons. I didn't leave the church because I was gay. I truly didn't. It wasn't something that really was a part of that struggle and a part of that that decision.
I'm curious how much did that affect your relationship, your marriage?
So
not leaving the church, but being gay, right? Like, was it something that was, I know you taught, like you said, you mentioned it at the beginning and she understood and everything, but then did it just kind of get scooted to the side and we didn't really address it or talk about it or deal with it at all?
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of, yeah. Like first of all, like, what do you do? I mean, we wanted, when we were first married, like, we wanted to be whatever a good member of the church looked like, right? And how do you navigate a marriage with different sexual orientations that don't necessarily mesh? But I mean, I don't know if we necessarily need to go too deep with this, but like, we had a super engaging and fulfilling sex life. That was never a problem. There was a problem with some of the slower moments, though, like the cuddling, the intimate things. Like, there was always a part of me that wasn't really into that. And for my ex, that was a really big part of how she experiences affection and love. It was those slower moments, and I couldn't really give that to her. And so, I mean, when we fast forward 10 years and the marriage started falling apart, we also had a business that ended in tragedy. There were a lot of kind of problems. Again, it wasn't necessarily because I was gay. It was because there was a lot of stress in the marriage caused by a failing business. So
back to when you left the church. So we make
Right.
a conscious choice to leave the church.
we make a
Because
conscious
of
choice to leave
doctrine.
the church.
I want to ask you a bunch of questions about that too,
Okay, great.
because I think that, like I said before we started recording, like, I have grown up thinking that I was separate from the church and that we were just Jack Mormons, and it wasn't really that big. I mean, I was baptized, and the narrative and the story that I had for myself around the church has evolved and changed to the point where I've really acknowledged and recognized how much of an impact it's had on me. You were, from the sounds of it, far more active. Your family was far more religious.
Yeah, I
You
was a
went on
returned
mission,
missionary.
right?
So was my ex.
Got
She also
sealed in the
served in
temple,
mission.
whole 9 yards, right?
Yeah.
And so what was that process like of, like, when the decision finally came to where we're going to step away from the church? How did that feel? And like, what type of feelings did it bring up? What did you go through in that experience?
So it was actually super terrifying, and it was a process.
Right.
It didn't just it wasn't like flipping a switch, and it wasn't something that I ever envisioned myself doing. And it was a lot of wrestling with what I truly believed versus what I was being taught. And when I was in my, mid to late 20s, I finally had the confidence and the self-awareness to start feeling out what I believed to be true versus what didn't really make sense anymore. I mean, a lot of the terminology that we say with people who leave the church is that everybody has a shelf, and the things that we don't believe or the things we don't want to deal with, we put on that shelf until there's enough on the shelf that the shelf breaks. It was kind of that way. And there were enough fundamental doctrinal things that just didn't make sense to me anymore. And like I said, attending the church to be edified and to worship and whatever else wasn't something that was serving me anymore. And so I feel that I parted ways with the church on a pretty friendly basis. It was like we agreed to disagree, and now we're just parting ways. For my ex, it was definitely more angry, and there was a lot more injustice with that on her end. And that's okay. But we went through that process together, and it happened at largely, the same time for us. I mean, she did some specific things a few months before I did, but it was just a few months. So I feel that made the process easier, going through it together.
Did you go through the whole process of like getting your name removed and everything like that from the records, or did you just?
So my ex did, and I definitely tried. At the moment that I went to do that, the legal firm that we were going through required additional stuff from me that a few months before they didn't require from my ex. And I wasn't very interested in surrendering some of that information. And it wasn't really important enough. And so,
Yeah.
I mean, on paper, I'm still a member of the church.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And
I
it's
mean, it doesn't
fine.
really matter to me.
Well, and they leave me alone. If I mean, I have some other friends where it's a different story, where it's people constantly reaching out and trying to get a hold of the kids and whatever else. And they've left me alone.
Steph's got the visiting home teachers, the sweet ladies that come by, and like just last month brought over her birthday gift. A pair of socks to wish her a happy birthday.
Right.
It
Gotta
is
love that.
so weird because like I've never been like a prominent member of the church. Like not
Were you even baptized?
I was baptized.
Okay. I was going to say they have to have your name somewhere.
I did go a couple of times when I lived in Twilla, like in the early 2000s. Like there's no notification of like, oh, I'm here or I moved or
it's
anything.
strange.
And I'm like, how did you know? How did you know? They're like, hi. Like,
Right.
that, like, why are you following me?
We have this really funny story. We're going to tell it.
Are we going to tell
We're
it?
going to tell it. It's so
Oh,
funny.
gosh.
If you're not familiar with the church, then you might not think this is funny.
Everybody has these moments where, you don't want to participate with society. I had one of those moments.
Just to give the context, what we're talking about is they have like visiting home teachers. So I don't remember if it's like every month or whatever, but they're supposed to come to your house and they check on you and they'll talk to you. And like, if you're not a active member, then their goal is to obviously get you to come back to church. And I don't even know if they come if you are an active member. Like if you're actively coming to church, they still do.
Okay.
Yeah, they do.
Like the intention, I think, like anything else, is probably good natured at heart, but it's also really fucked up in a bunch of different ways for a bunch of different reasons. And like, there's no acknowledgement of, oh, maybe we're violating somebody's, like,
Maybe they don't want us here.
Right. And not only that, but like maybe people have some issues around religion and trauma and things like that we are just sparking by coming and knocking on your door and saying, hi, how are you? Anyways, I don't remember what we were doing that day. And they come and knock on the door and we don't answer because we don't want to deal with it.
The curtains are open and I like bail to the room.
Oh, yeah. You were in
and
the
I
living
was
room,
like, I'm not doing this today. You can get the door.
So she hides. And
I like scurry.
they knock, whatever. And then they go away. And we're laughing about it and we're kind of feeling bad, but not really feeling bad. And because it's not a big deal.
And they're really sweet.
Yeah, they're really nice.
really sweet. I can't,
And then I had to leave or something. And the van is parked in the driveway out front.
So did you invite them in your house?
No. So we didn't answer the door or anything. And they're gone. Right. They leave. And so
they leave a little like thing on the door because it was like
it was for your birthday.
Yeah.
So they leave her little birthday present. So I go out to the van and I'm leaving and we're still kind of laughing about this whole thing. And Steph comes out and she's like talking to me at the van and, goodbye, I love you, blah, blah, blah. And we realize that the two ladies are still in their car, right? And they are now coming back down the street towards our house.
They were like staking us out.
And so Stephanie panics and just
I'm outside now.
Jumps into the back of the van to hide. So in our driveway, I'm sitting
because
there.
They might see you,
right? Not only will they definitely saw her,
right?
And they also saw our open door. So our front door's wide open.
I shut the van door with my foot while I was laying down, like, oh god!
And I'm just sitting there in the van with my
looking at me,
driver's side door open.
You could have been looking forward, but you're like,
Stephanie.
they saw you, and I'm like, no.
And it's 100% certain that these ladies probably won't. Well, they'll probably be back.
It's like, well, maybe. I mean, at least next time, like that sparked a moment. I'm like, oh, I need to communicate this boundary.
Yeah.
Be like, this isn't working.
Yeah.
This just isn't working. Thank you for your kindness, but I would appreciate it if
you leave me alone.
Yeah, if we
no longer don't do this.
Yeah, let's like obviously like if I'm gonna dive in the backseat of a van and hide like a 2-year-old, then like we need to establish some boundaries here.
Oh my
this is not working.
So where are you at now?
Do you hide?
Do you hide
in the
from
backseat
your
of a
visiting
van?
home teachers?
I have not had like any form of visiting or home teachers for 8 years. I have never had to worry about that. I know, right?
Where are you at with your
How?
relationship in regards to the church? Like, are you at peace with it now? Do you still have stuff that you have to process? Is it still an ongoing journey?
I am at peace with it, I believe, or at least at peace with a lot of it. It is not something that I have had the the courage or the safe space to like talk about it with my family. And that is always kind of a strange thing to try to broach, like to try to bring up or to try to not bring up or whatever. And that will be a hard thing for a long time, probably. But as far as my friends and as far as, you know, the people that I see, like they know, and it's fine and it's okay. And it's not something where I'm going to sit around and bag on the church. Like, I don't want to just be that guy, but to just be open and honest about not going or whatever else. Like, it's easier and it's fine.
Do you have a belief in God still?
I have a belief in like God things. I believe in people.
I've thought about this lately because I have recently I've reconnected to my version of God.
Yeah, right?
And so I'm curious, like, that's why I asked the question, because I'm curious if, we'll just say if your version of God, because it sounds like you do in some sense, right? Have a connection to something, a higher power or something, right? Does that look and feel like the Mormon God?
No, it doesn't.
Looks much different.
It does. And that was part of kind of sifting out or teasing out what I truly believe and truly always did believe versus the stuff that's not working anymore. It's like, I believe in this. There are certain feelings and certain experiences that are important to me. And I know that those happened and I know that those were real. And so all of this other hogwash that didn't convey love or convey fairness or whatever, all of those other things became redefined as something else. And it was time to let go of that. So the Mormon version of God, I don't subscribe to that. But yeah, like specifically people and ancestors, the people who came before, the people who will come after, like that type of unity, that type of really, really big family. I don't know, the idea that heaven is a place that we build, it's not a place that we go to. I really like those ideas instead.
Yeah.
So you guys left the church when you were about 30.
Yeah.
And then it was 2 years ago, so 6 years before you guys started going through your divorce.
Mm-hmm.
And you said it was more from like stress from a failed business, and that's how did that like start to turn about and come out?
Which part?
So when you guys started to decide that you were going to separate, like
Okay.
what was?
So I don't fully know. I also
Okay.
don't fully remember. Like the idea to separate and the idea to finally divorce was not my choice.
Okay.
And I mean, even 2 years ago, I would have fought for my marriage 2 years ago.
Okay.
3 years ago, because all of that started in 2019-ish.
I remember when we met, you were still kind of in that space where you kind of were still fighting for it.
Yeah.
Where it seemed like you were still kind of, I remember that. Yeah. Sorry. That's just a side note for Craig's brain.
No, that's fine. And that was kind of the scene for men's group, was I still wanted this and then gradually didn't want it anymore. I just kind of wanted all of this to be over and done with. But yeah, that's how that was. And so the thing is, dealing with a marriage that at the time I would have done everything to fix. And one of the very biggest reasons that carried the most weight was because I knew that if my ex was no longer in my picture, I wouldn't have anything to hide behind as far as my orientation goes. So being married, so even 2 or 3 years ago, the idea of me being gay and being like loud about it, was not within my realm of possibilities. It's not something that I believed. Like at that time, 3 years ago, it was something I was terrified about. And it was something that scared the shit out of me. And to not have my ex in my life to hide behind and to show and to prove to everybody that I wasn't gay because here's my wife was a really big threat and a really big thing to be scared of.
Yeah.
So having that taken away by her choice, and it's like, now that's fine. That was a lot to go through. And so I was left in a situation where I wasn't in the church anymore and I was still gay. So apparently going on a mission and going through 2 rounds of conversion therapy and going through 10 years of, temple marriage stuff doesn't necessarily make a person not gay. I was in a situation where it's like, I was at a big crossroads. There was a big decision. It's like, I know that deep within me, I crave a relationship with a man. That has not changed. That's not different. It doesn't look different. No matter how I try to spin it, the bottom line is I'm attracted to men. And the thing that I was most terrified of in that moment was my family, who are all still conservative LDS, and my old friends, who are all still conservative LDS. And so, I mean, they're like another thing to remember is for men in my situation who have been married and have kids and then come out as gay, usually or very often what happens is the tension builds so much that they either leave their spouse or maybe even cheat on their spouse. And then leaving the church happens all at once. Like suddenly they're getting excommunicated, or suddenly they are, in trouble with the church and they're getting divorced. And so they have this really big thing that outs them, that everybody knows. I didn't have that. I didn't leave the church because I was gay, and I didn't get a divorce because I was gay. And so it was entirely possible to simply be gay and be private about it. I made a decision at one time that maybe I'll just be gay in my own private way and never let my family know, and just kind of have this duplicitous lifestyle in a way, and that will be okay. And I was talking to a cousin that I confide a lot of things in. She's a very intelligent, very, very gifted counselor. She's a therapist. And this happened back in November. And
Just last year.
And I had this resolution to never tell my family and never tell my old friends, like never tell anybody. And for whatever reason, after this conversation, I don't remember what we said. I don't remember how it went, but I remember driving home to my tiny house in Tooele, and I was overcome with the realization of, oh shit, I am going to be telling everybody. And so from November, and I decided that January 1st would be the day, that the new year would be a new day and it would be a new thing. And so from, also I wouldn't be ruining 2 big holidays. So I wouldn't be ruining Thanksgiving or Christmas. And so I set to work, and I had to do so much private emotional work to prepare for that. There was a lot to unload. And so there were plenty of nights where I would go home and worry, and I would cry myself to sleep. And I was absolutely terrified that my family would reject me, or they would respond poorly, or like I was terrified of things that I just didn't know yet. I just didn't know, and I couldn't know until I just did it. I drafted a letter And that's how I chose to do it. I was going to come out to my family in the form of a letter, just because with the letter, like, they can react however they want to, and I don't have to be present for it. And then maybe we can talk about it later, right? And so I drafted a letter a number of times, and I let other people read that letter and give me feedback about what this or that was actually saying so that it could be perfect. And on January 1st, I had my boys. My boys were with me in the tiny house. We spent the New Year together. We also spent Christmas together. I sent that letter to my family's group chat. We had, like, everybody in my family has an iPhone, and we're all a part of a group chat, and I know what they can and cannot read on an iPhone. And I sent it there so that nobody could claim that they didn't get a letter or an email. So I sent it there. And it took a while for my sisters to respond, and it was just simple messages about, hey, we love you anyway. And it was nice, but it wasn't enough. And my parents didn't respond at all. And so here I was in my tiny house with my kids, and I was going nuts, and things were like, it was a complete war zone inside my brain and in my heart. And I was like, I need some form of support right now. And so I got on Facebook and uploaded a picture, and I was like, hey guys. And the thing is, like, me being gay was the worst kept secret ever. Like, so many people, I mean, I just said in the Facebook message, I was like, oh, hey, here's the elephant in the room. Everybody kind of knew this. And by the way, we're just going to start living this way now. And so many good people perked up and was like, yeah, we knew. But, like, good for you for figuring it out, or being courageous, I guess. And all of the simple messages from old friends and old acquaintances started pouring in about this Facebook post, and, you know, rocking in the new year and stuff like that. And that gave me a lot of courage and a lot of reassurance that this is going to be okay. It took a couple days for my parents to say anything. And the words that my dad said were not the greatest words. And my mom still has not said anything in regards to that letter or in regards to that announcement.
My goodness.
And so like, the point of all of this is, when a person comes out and announces to the world that there are differences that they are going to choose to embrace. I mean, and I'm 38 now. Like, I was 37 back in January, like, lived a specific lifestyle one way, tried my best, and it didn't work. And so now I'm just going to do this now. Like, odds are that person went through a lot to get the courage to say those things. And when a person makes a big announcement like that, it's very possible that they need to make that announcement a lot. And so, I mean, after the big announcement on Facebook, I had to go back to work, and I'm not friends with anybody on Facebook at work. And so it's like, nobody here knows anything that happened the day before. And so I get to figure this out. And I mean, to be 38 and I have 3 kids and all the other things, like, that, there was a lot of worry and a lot of just kind of, okay, well, let's just suck it up and live our truth type thing that I was never used to doing. And so coming out has had to happen again and again and again. And like, the thing that I want to just kind of preach about with this is, if a person mentions a thing that is contrary to your, I guess, our listeners or whatever, personal beliefs, it is absolutely okay to just, like, talk about it. Because one of the most gaslighting experiences with all of this has been the silence from my family. When I'm around my mom and dad or my sisters or whatever, and it is as if nothing has ever happened, I start to question if I even did anything. Like, did did that letter actually happen? Did the work that went into that letter ever matter? And so that is why with June, I have been so loud about pride. And it's been posts, it's been special episodes on my own podcast that I mentioned earlier, and like the Pride celebration, whatever. Like I got to march in the Pride parade this year. I know, like, and it was the absolute most perfect thing. And so just letting that build and letting that affirm that it is okay. Everything is okay. It is absolutely okay to just be me and to be the dad that I know how to be for my kids. And like, it is 100% possible to have very good, normal kids and be a gay dad. Like, it's okay. It's possible.
Have you had, I mean, it sounds like you've had conversations with your boys, obviously.
Sure. So my kids are pretty young, and those conversations have been very basic.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not a lot to like hash out or to try to teach them or whatever. It's just like, and my ex is very supportive. She's been very supportive of this from day one. There are a lot of other things that we butt heads with, but it's fine. They get support from both households, and that helps. And it's been the biggest non-issue with my kids ever.
That's nice.
Right. And the fact that it hasn't been like the really awkward, like dad sits you down and like has this really heavy, weird conversation that nobody really wants to be a part of. It's just been the really easy statements every now and again. Like, oh, hey, we're going to watch, this show that's about a gay romance between two guys. And they're like, okay, because it's not weird to them because they're little and they don't understand the world.
Right.
And so I get to just kind of help shape that. And that's cool.
Go ahead, babe.
I was like, what did it feel like? Like, describe showing up at Pride this year. And then, yes, go.
So Pride, I had never celebrated Pride before. I'd never been to a Pride festival before. I had no problem with other people going, but I didn't live close or whatever. There was a conflict every time. So I'd never done it, but I am on I'm on a queer swim team in Salt Lake. I am the team is called Quack, the Queer Utah Aquatics Club.
Oh my gosh.
I know, huh? So it's an entire, like, it's the most normal
awesome.
swim team in the whole world, except everybody is gay. And and they march in Pride every year. And so we were there. It's like we were this super small group of just like swimmers compared to like the University of Utah, who had 300 people marching in their part of the parade. And we were a group of 30. And we were in like homemade tie-dye and carrying like pool floaties and whatever else, because I know, and a couple of us were marching in Speedos because they totally can. I didn't. And because we were such a small group, I got to have my oldest son with me. And so he got to hold like a duck floaty and march beside his dad. And I was holding the big rainbow flag over my head. And regardless of the huge support and the noise that the crowd was making, I don't know if you saw the parade. Like, I don't know what your experience of Pride was, but there was a flood of people there, which is super great. But there came this like moment of knowing, like just one of those quiet realizations that the thing that I was doing was really important. Not just the political stuff of it, right? Not just for the crowd and not just for like the big faceless mass of LGBTQ people, but for me and for my boys. And I knew that while I was marching down that street in downtown Salt Lake City, holding the rainbow flag, and my son was in his stupid duck floaty, I knew that something very big, like very subtle, but very big, was happening for me and for my family. And so the Pride Festival was great. It was super corporate, which I mean is fine, but the parade itself was probably one of the most important things I've done. I've reflected back on the parade every day. So it just happened this past Sunday, and it has brought me to tears to be there with my son and to be surrounded by good men and women who were like me, and to see that it is 100% okay to do life my way was the biggest reaffirming thing that I've had in a really long time.
That's beautiful.
Thanks.
I'm so happy you got to that was your experience. Like, you have that experience. You have that. You always have that.
Right?
That is yours. That is yours.
Yeah. And like, I don't know. And had it happened some other way, like if I was a part of like the University of Utah thing, like everybody was in like gray shirts with colorful lettering and whatever, as opposed to like the homemade tie-dye with like, you know, how in the 90s people would cut their shirts into strips to make like that really dated 90s fringe so that everybody was in like bare midriffs and stuff. Yeah. And we were just a bunch of queers marching behind this truck and just having a great time, just showing our true colors, so to speak. That, like, keeping that so small and so personal, like, we were just people, we were friends, we're a fucking swim team. That is what brought it home. Like, I was surrounded by friends. I was surrounded by people like me who were just more interested in dancing down the street. And my boy got to be with me for that. And next year, likely my other two boys will be in it too.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
That's really beautiful. There's these people that started off on Facebook that are trying to start a Pride for Twila. And one lady named Haley has already started, and they had a picnic last year, but they're having another one this year at the Dow James on the 25th, family friendly. So I'm going to be there. It might be really fun if you and your boys can make it.
On the 25th? What day of the week is that?
It's a Saturday.
We could come.
Okay. So there's that. So we'll see you on the 25th.
My goodness. How fun.
And there's another group that's working on trying to, I'm hoping the two forces combine so Pride can start taking place in this area too.
Oh, I love that.
So, but yeah.
I love that so much.
Me too.
Right?
Yeah.
Is there like a dress code? Do we need to come in tie-dye?
I think we should.
Right?
Like,
tie-dye and short shorts.
Right.
And...
I think it's just like as this one is, it's just basically a picnic, and they're going to try and have stuff for kids, and it's just like hanging out.
I love that. Just building community, yeah. Right?
So bring food and your tie-dye.
Yeah.
I think a lot about, because we went to Pride last year. Mm-hmm. We've been a couple of years. Last year was a big deal and was very significant. But I think about the march, because last year they came down State Street. Was it the same where they started at the Capitol and come down State Street?
No, this year it was like 3rd South or something.
Okay.
It was kind of a different route. It was also a pretty long route. It was great though, but yeah, it wasn't State Street.
I just think about, the fact that Pride takes place in downtown Salt Lake, which is the, like literally the epicenter of the Mormon church.
Right.
It makes me like, it's twofold. Like, it makes me so happy, and I love the contrast of it. I love the, because it's literally like there's so many things about the church that, they just have to change. It's going to take a long time, but it will change eventually. And I love the contrast of that. But there's another part of me that's like, the healing aspect of what's taking place, because this is my own thought, my own belief, and belief isn't even correct. It's just my own thought process. But when I think about the Mormon church and I think about other religions and the dogma that surrounds it and the way that people holy shit. I am doing just like the utmost terrible job of formulating any thought and or expressing anything.
Words are hard.
Like in any way, shape, or form. But it makes me really happy that you had that experience. And I love that, like, I think it's, at least for me from the outside, it's like compounded in a sense because you come from that church. You come from that background. You come from that place. And it's so fucked up. Like, it's so despicable the way that they handle everything in regards to sexuality. It's not just homosexuality. It's everything in regards to sexuality. And I think it's really powerful I think it's really healing, basically, right? And I'm really grateful that you got the experience. And I think on the big grand scheme of things, I think it's really healing and beneficial for it to take place in Utah and take place in downtown Salt Lake. And all the people that, I mean, it's only a matter of time, I think, until, like I said, they'll change or they won't, right? You can't change everybody, but it just makes me, I get so frustrated and so upset with the way that it's handled still.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that is the way that the church handles anything, right? When it comes to the LGBT community, they just suck miserably at it. And so it's really great. And I'm really happy for you. And I'm going to stop trying to formulate questions because apparently this is not my episode to try to get my thoughts out.
I think you're doing a great job.
No, that's fine. The church is an institution where there were just with my personal experience and in regards to my own story, there were so many obstacles stacked against me. Being gay, being abused, being a couple different things, there was no way that I ever could have thrived. I could have never done that. I couldn't have stepped in, like there wasn't a space for that. And so yeah, parting ways with that simply had to happen if I were to be truly happy.
How do you grapple now? And I don't mean to go back to this, but what does it feel like now to still not have a response from your mom? Like still not have it acknowledged in a sense?
It sucks and it's really disappointing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's okay to go back to this, but so I am not the first person in my extended family to come out. And the thing is, in sharing this, I don't want to like paint anybody in the light of a villain just because a lot of people were acting out of fear and they were acting according to what they believed, which was largely what the institution was teaching. And I want that to be very clear. I don't hate my family. I'm not afraid of the people in my in regards to some of these things that happened, but I'm not the first in my family to come out as gay. And the first person who came out is a cousin who was much older than me, and that whole process was handled very poorly. And I was led to believe that it was handled that way all because of my cousin. He was compared to, we had my dad and other uncles really descend on him and really give him an unfair and a hard time about his choice to embrace his sexuality. And so it is no surprise to me why he ended up fleeing the country. He lives in Brazil now. And I mentioned that in my letter. I was like, this happened, and this possibility scares the shit out of me. I have a second cousin who came out and actually got married to his husband 2 years after I got married. And his story was more lukewarm. It was more like, we don't really know what to do, but what we did with this other guy kind of didn't work. And so like whatever, right? Sort of. And I was like, that gives me hope. Like if this ends up being just like that, then I think that would be a better thing. And so I don't know, like to not be able to talk about normal things, to not be able to talk about important things is always, you know, unfulfilling and leaves a person with a sense of loss and a sense of frustration. And it's nothing that my family has ever been able to do. And so in regards to my mom, I don't know what's going on in her mind. I do know that I do know what was going through her mind when I was 17. And I would imagine that much of the same beliefs are still there, that something was broken, that she was losing something, and that perhaps all is lost. She still remains like cheery and happy when I'm with her, but we don't talk about important things. And so I truly don't know.
Baby, I don't know if I should be asking questions. My track record this episode is not good. So if you've got something, please. I'm sitting here trying to formulate something that's going to take me 15 minutes to clusterfuck my way to get out. And it's going to be a miserable question.
Well, I can ask a question, or you can. It's not going to be a miserable question.
Please go ahead.
What support system? What does your support system look like now?
So my support system, I have a lot of I have a few very, very close friends that I speak to regularly who are interested and intrigued and engaged. Also, I have my very best friend. She has her oldest daughter is also queer. And they left the church at about the same time that I did. And so there has been a lot of navigating stuff too. And so she in particular has been, you know, very helpful and very loving and shown all the support. And it's not just like the word service. It's like, I am obviously a very important part in your life, and me being happy matters to you. And I love that. It gives a person strength to carry on, you know, doing the things. And then in regards, like I mentioned before that I kind of had to do an amount of navigating with the people at work. Being able to simply talk about things casually is something that I have done my best to intentionally do. Like, this is my life, and my life gets to be normal. And so we get to talk about all of my shitty dating experiences and all of the dumb things, related to this, and talk about it in a completely normal way. And approaching it that way, especially in a workforce that is so introverted and pretty reserved, has been great, because then they just know. And I never expect them to say anything, and I never expect them to have an opinion. It's just me sharing stories because I'm a loudmouth and I like to talk about my life. And that has been good to just normalize things. And so, I mean, the people at work in their own way have been a good support too.
That's awesome. It's so hard to, like you said, just like keep coming out. And then once you do, to be able to continue to live that way and have that support and not be like, okay, I'll go back to not making anybody uncomfortable. Like I said the thing, and okay, now I'll go back.
Right. And living apologetically.
Yeah.
Like living apologetically. Right? Like pretending that your life is something that you need to apologize for.
Sorry I made this hard for you.
Right. I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable now, but it's just my life and you're uncomfortable, and that's hard for me to deal with. Like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
So one of the guys that I went out with a few weeks ago is not a native English speaker, and I don't speak Spanish. And I have a sister who is a Spanish teacher. And so at first, this guy would send me some messages in Spanish I mean, iPhones are an amazing thing. You can translate things in your messages directly into the translator. Like, it's the greatest thing ever. And a lot of it like didn't really make sense. And so I would ask my sister Spanish questions with no context. And she would answer because she's a Spanish teacher, and this is great, right? And so then I made the conscious decision, like, there gets to be context. Like, just like I decided with my workforce, like, I get to talk about this, and this sister is probably the safest sister that I could say anything to. And so I started giving her the context. Like, I'm seeing this guy who is from Colombia and he doesn't speak English like at all. And I don't know how comfortable things were on her end of our text conversation, but it was really freeing and really empowering for me to just kind of say the words and share the stories, like just to kind of combat the homophobia that was there for her and for me both. Like, there is instilled homophobia within me too. And all of that feeds into living apologetically. Like, and yeah. And so just gradually over the past while and the constant endeavor to just keep things normal, to normalize my life and to normalize my decisions have been a big thing.
Is that a part of like, does a part of that normalization take place just for yourself? Like, it's not
Largely,
just the
yes.
external, where I want to make sure that I have these with the coworkers and with my family, and I want to be able to be free and normal in who I am. But like you said, right? Like you just said it.
No, that's exactly it. Like, and it's for me first,
right?
Like, I get to have a normal life. This is my life, so it gets to be normal.
Does that just feel weird sometimes?
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I've spent my whole life living apologetically, like living as a problem, living as something that people deal with and something that people put up with, and certainly something that people don't understand. And so yeah, for me first, it is the conscious effort to not feed into that. And I mean, I still do sometimes, but less and less.
I think about, here I go again. We'll see if we can get this one out.
I think it's going to be great.
It's going to be amazing. Boundaries. So a lot of what I have been doing lately is acknowledging that I didn't have boundaries growing up, and that they were something that I struggled with as far as like setting them for myself and all these kind of different things. But then, like, being able to communicate and express boundary type things to family members. And
like, what do you mean? Boundary type things?
Like just the process of communicating difficult things to family members, right? And expressing things from a place of like no longer living a certain way, right? Like acknowledging that this is what I'm going to finally do and say for myself and speak up. And then like the fallout of that internal struggle that then takes place of, like you said, like you have that moment where you're like, did I even write that letter? Like, did this thing even happen? Is this thing even a real thing? The internal mindfuck that takes place after the fact. What are you doing with all of that? Like, what are you doing in regards to the continual work that takes place of not just externally practicing all of this stuff, but then all the internal work that still is going on? Like, what does that look like?
All of the internal work that goes on is just kind of it's the continuous push to share a message, or to show that I am still me, or this is what I actually am. So like what I'm meaning to say is one of the things that has shown up the very most is with writing. So, I mean, I have a writing podcast. Like writing has, I published a couple fantasy books when I was in my early 20s and haven't published a damn thing since. I mean, kind of. And it's so interesting because I was recently reading a book called Big Magic. Right? Have you read Big Magic?
Yes.
So it's one of the things that I think the author is Stephanie someone.
Oh,
Stephanie
that's not
Gilbert.
what I was. Elizabeth Gilbert.
Elizabeth
Yes.
Gilbert is not Stephanie Gilbert.
No.
Elizabeth Gilbert.
Is this an Elizabeth Gilbert?
This is an
book?
Elizabeth
Oh,
Gilbert.
shit.
Yeah, right.
It's an Elizabeth Gilbert.
Elizabeth Gilbert fucked me up recently.
Oh God.
In a beautiful way.
Not in a bad way.
But like,
Yeah, I
but
listened
like
to
ruined your life for a minute.
No, like cracked my life open
Oh,
in a
God.
really beautiful way. She was on Glennon Doyle's podcast a few
Yeah.
weeks back, and I listened to both of those because it was a 2-part episode, and it just rocked me to all sorts. I mean, she just challenged all sorts of different things and brought up so many different things inside of me. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about this book.
Yeah. So with Big Magic, toward the end, one of the things that she was able to articulate in such a fun way was that she was not able to write a drama if she was in a drama. And I sat there and reflected on that. I was at like a family vacation. This was pretty recent. And I was like alone. I stepped out to finish listening to this book because I had had enough family togetherness for a second. And I thought about that, and it's like, yeah, if I am living in this constant state of like conflict, it is so much harder to be creative. And if I am living in a way where I am like censoring and muting the way that I express myself, my ideas through this medium of writing, I'm not showing people who I am. And so, I mean, things have not fully come. I mean, this was a pretty recent realization, but just some of the things that I am able to do and show with my podcast, opening up, being open and honest in my podcast and sharing my experience of coming out at 37 and 38 and being gay, and how that has affected me creatively, and how that has freed up some different things with writing and with some of my creative outlets. And then to just create the mindset and the space in my tiny house to kind of put into motion some of these stories that keep coming up, and some of them have gay themes. And I mean, it's fine, like, to no longer be apologetic about it. Be like, yeah, I'm writing a gay romance. I mean, right now I'm outlining one, and it's fine. Right?
It's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the things that we do to tackle the internal monologue stuff, right? It's to show whatever voice that is actually coming from, that it's not in charge anymore. Right?
Not
I mean,
there. You say that, I'm like, oh no, oh God, gotta hide a little bit.
I mean, like Elizabeth Gilbert said, the fear gets to come along for the ride,
Yes.
but the fear doesn't get to hold the map and doesn't get to drive.
I love that line.
A lot.
What else? Do you have any other, because we're going to wrap up, and so much of what Stephanie and I are heavily involved in right now, like I said earlier, was all this healing. And so we have like daily practices and things that we're constantly trying to incorporate into our life. So if we look at like unhealthy coping mechanisms and unhealthy ways of existing and being and processing and feeling and not feeling trauma and all these other kind of things, right? We have to slowly transition and start incorporating healthy ways. And that process takes years and years and years, and so on and so forth. But what are some of the things that you're trying to do, or that you consciously are doing with that in mind, where you're trying to not just live a healthier life or a healthier way of living, but more about being like more loving to yourself and more caretaking this person that, has lived such a life up until this point?
So one of the biggest things for me, like living a duplicitous lifestyle, or not, like living in the shadows, a person, so me, like I developed a specific relationship to self-image. And one of the things that I learned growing up and like in my early 20s to deal with uncomfortable feelings was to eat. And so specifically during the divorce, which sucked, and then after the divorce was done and I was like at home pulling myself out of a depression, there was a lot of simply eating, of just turning off the brain and going for it. And ever since I have made this conscious switch over to a more mindful and a more empowered self-image, one of the things that I have been working on very diligently is mindfulness, and not just with eating, but with the way I carry myself throughout my day. And so with handling the emotion and with handling some of the self-doubt and some of the gross things that come up, I've been discovering new ways to handle that. I mean, through meditation and breath work and like clean eating and whatever else. And so, I mean, like we're still on a journey. I mean, if you can't tell, like we're not there yet. Like we've still got a few pounds to go and whatever else. But just opening up that space and finally realizing that like my body is worth taking care of. And when I take care of my body, it takes care of me. I mean, we hear these little cliche things all the time, but then to believe it. And so yeah, I mean, with things like meditation and breath work and yoga and stretching and exercise, I go to the, swim team and stuff like that. Those are really big steps that even in the past year I wasn't doing. And over these past months have made a world of difference. And so we'll keep doing it, right?
How does it feel to be on a gay swim team?
It's the coolest thing ever. No, and like I said, it's the most normal swim team in the whole world. So there are plenty of people there who have been swimming their whole lives and are like really good. And then there are a few of us who, like, I swam in high school. I was a swimmer in high school, but it's been a minute. And so like there's some endurance to kind of build up and whatever. And so we're just kind of in our own lane being slow. But yeah, I mean, one of the coolest things about it is the most normal swim team. Like everybody talks about work and life and friends, and everything is completely normal.
That sounds so awesome.
I know. Also, everything is really gay, but like normal.
That's such a perfect like experience though, I think, right? Just to be able to be in your life surrounded by a bunch of gay men and just having it be normal, right? It's just a normal experience because there isn't anything abnormal about it. There isn't anything wrong with it. There isn't anything different. It's just
everything's fine.
Exactly. That's so neat. I'm so happy for you, Devin, and I'm so grateful that we did this. I really love you and I care about you deeply, and I'm glad that you feel different, which is really, really good. Like you just feel more, I guess, connected to your body or more present, or you just feel different.
Yeah.
And
connected
really
to a lot of things, like a lot of those unseen things, right? A lot of those subtle things that when you're wrapped up in worrying, like when you're wrapped up in self-doubt and you're wrapped up in that conflict of being weird and being misunderstood, you miss them.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Anything else, babe?
I'm just really happy that you joined us and let us witness you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
Throw your stuff out again one more time so people
My
know where to
stuff.
find you.
Okay, so if you are looking for a writing podcast, my podcast is Writing in the Tiny House. It is writing advice. At the same time, it's also bigger life advice, like I mentioned throughout this episode. And if you are looking to follow me on social media, my handle is @author Devin Davis, specifically on Instagram. That's where all of that stuff gets posted first.
Yeah. And we'll put it in the show notes for everybody as well. Okay.
Okay.
Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for listening, everybody.
Have a good one.